the longer term effects to the economy of many of these places being shuttered, agencies being unable to deliver their work will be lasting.
Let's turn our attention to America for the next couple of minutes. The Pentagon is redirecting billions of dollars from research programs to pay military troops as the US government shutdown enters its third week. With Democrats and Republicans still deadlocked over the federal budget, the Trump administration has been laying off workers across several government agencies. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has warned that the shutdown is now beginning to hit the real economy. Let's talk to Lara Spirit, Washington correspondent for The Times. A very good afternoon from us in London, Lara. Which is the first part of this huge economy that this will hit and hurt?
Well, exactly. That is the big question at the moment. Clearly, there are many areas on which people like Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, will be very worried about. Traditionally, although it affects billions and billions of spending in the government, there's tended to be not massive economic effects from government shutdowns. But with Mike Johnson, the Speaker, warning that this could be the longest shutdown in US history if it continues, and there does still seem to be absolutely no sign of a resolution, you are looking at some economic effects. If you look at, for example, tourism, many people will be looking at the current reports about airport delays, for example, and be weighing up whether or not they want to travel to the US at a time like this. They will be hoping that they can still continue to protect, as you say, payment for those who work for the military. And we have seen from the Pentagon today a statement saying that they've managed to move $8 billion from research and other areas into the payroll. Not totally clear if that's legal, but it looks unlikely that anybody is going to question that at the moment, given how necessary this is going to be for many of those workers. But the longer term effects to the economy of many of these places being shuttered, agencies being unable to deliver their work will be lasting.
It could be extraordinary, couldn't it? Because, as you said, it looks like it might go on for much longer than previous shutdown adjacent situations. And surely so much of this is political. It's a chance for the Democrats to show what they're made of, to try and hold the Republican administration to account. So what is your assessment of the future of this?
Well, the assessment at the moment is it's very hard to see how there's going to be any imminent breakthrough. So we've had 8 votes now to advance legislation to try and reopen the government through to mid-November. The last one failed by 49 votes to 45. Now you need 60. There's no headway being made by either Republicans or Democrats to move the dial on that vote count at all. So Republicans still quite some way off. But you're hearing from the White House Office of Management and Budget, for example, who wrote yesterday that the administration is making every preparation to try and ride out this shutdown without caving to any of the demands from the Democrats. They said they're going to, in the meantime, continue making cuts to the federal workforce, which, of course, they will hope will try and bring some more Democrats who are worried about permanent changes to the federal workforce and job losses to the table. But at the moment, it's not clear that that's happening. And in the meantime, you have, as we've spoken about, massive delays at air traffic control, for example. You do have impacts to the economy. And I don't mean to diminish that. So the Congressional Budget Office estimated that in 2018 to 2019, the impact on the economy was 0.02% of GDP. Now, that doesn't sound massive, but it is still obviously significant. And given that they are warning that this could be the longest one that we've ever seen, and given that it's very hard to see any breakthrough now, it is clearly very significant that there is still no real indication of how they're going to solve this shutdown and reopen the government.
And obviously just incredibly difficult for those employees who are in literally the firing line at the moment. So how much noise can be made on their behalf?
Well, it's a very good point. And I think that at the moment, Democrats have a messaging question because they want to keep the shutdown focused on healthcare. There was the big question in Democrat circles at the beginning of this shutdown. Do we focus the shutdown on saying on questions around democracy and rights that they want to talk about with regard to the Trump administration, deportations that they also want to talk about, or do we focus on something more bread and butter and more specific? And to their mind, the expiration of these healthcare credits and cuts to Medicaid, for example, should be chief of people's minds. And so they focus very doggedly, actually, on this question of healthcare during the shutdown, as a result of which I don't think they're necessarily going to focus focus as much on talking about federal workers, not least because Republicans wager that from their perspective, at least, federal workers might not make up a massively significant portion of their voter base. And I think this question about whether or not Democrats can keep the shutdown focus on healthcare will be a big determinant of how long this lasts. And for that reason, I think the conversation isn't really necessarily about those who are losing or at threat of losing their job. There is a big conversation about getting the military pay, as we've just mentioned, with regard to the Pentagon. There is also a big question about those who are legally obliged to continue working without pay. I think key among them, of course, those air traffic controllers and those who work in airports, not least because they're seeing an uptick we've heard from the Transport Secretary here in those who are calling in sick, and because the kind of major shutdown that is cited here in the US, the one that ran from the winter of 2018 through to the beginning of 2019, ended in part really because of the impact on flights and air traffic control, and the fact that Trump reopened the government after there were some really serious delays for people at airports, particularly in New York's LaGuardia Airport, which was temporarily shut down in January 2019. So that is very significant because they can't they can't not go to work. They're legally obliged to, but clearly you're seeing significant delays in a number of airports across the country now, and that will be, I think, kind of top of the agenda in the shutdown conversation over the coming weeks.
And I have to say, Lara, I mean, if you are of the nervous disposition as a traveller, you shouldn't go anywhere near any of the articles that are detailing exactly what's happening in air traffic control at the moment, because they are frightening in some airports. 40% down on staffing, but the airports are still determined to carry on letting planes come into land and take off. So I'm just saying, don't go there.
Happy holidays.
Lara, thank you very much indeed. Always good to talk to you. That's Lara Spirit, Washington correspondent for The Times.
It's absolutely terrifying.
It is terrifying, actually, Jane. So, I mean, you can inform yourself, obviously. I'm not telling you not to inform yourself, but presumably there is still quite a strong attitude towards safety. When you look at the statistics, you think, I hope that is the case.
Yes, I think we can all very much agree on that.